Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You are here with Austin from Ohio, and today is Monday, August 23rd, 2021. As expected, the FDA approval went through for the one mark that we've all been expecting. And as expected, as you can see with this first one here, I'm just gonna jump right in. I'm gonna spare the pleasantries and jump right in because we gotta do some digging. Okay, Washington Times. Mandates begin in earnest after full FDA approval of Pfizer mark. This is huge. It ain't even a separate headline. Mandates begin. That is the first words of this headline right here. And we knew that was going to happen. They tested the water before the approval. Everybody was accepting of it. The public mind was accepting of it. They implemented it today, Monday, August 23rd. So there's that. Also, there has been terrible division today. Division unlike any I have ever seen, and it's been bad this past 19 months. But it got a lot worse today because people were on there, as we've already seen in the post that I put up the other day with just a few comments in a comment section. People are just arguing over, oh, now you don't have an excuse and you need to go get this thing so we can go back to normal, because people still believe that. And it's really exhausting. And the animosity is only going to be turned up now between people. The marked are going to blame the unmarked. And the unmarked people are going to have to deal with some things in the future, in the very near future, that are very challenging. Not impossible, challenging. All right, let's jump in here. Hospitals, governors, and the military wasted little time Monday in requiring their workers to roll up their sleeves after the Food and Drug Administration fully approved a COVID-19 vaccine for the first time. Hours after the Pfizer-BioNTech shots received licensure, the Pentagon confirmed it will follow through on Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's push to mandate the shots for over 1 million active-duty troops. Decimation of the military, of the national military. How do you like that? Cox Health, the hospital system in Missouri, walloped by the Delta variant, said workers must get their first dose by October 15th. CEO Stephen Edwards tied it directly to the approval decision and said that careful consideration will be given to allow medical and religious exemptions. I don't believe that one bit. Maybe at first, but they're working on they've already gotten rid of it in a bunch of places. A lot of October deadlines. I've said this in the last video. A lot of October deadlines. I saw one earlier. I think it was nurses or it was hospice workers or something like that. They had to get theirs by the 31st of October, which is Halloween. So we know they like the month of October. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio on Monday said all public education employees, from teachers to custodians, must receive at least one dose of a C19 mark by September 27th. And New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy said school workers and other public employees in his state must get marked or face weekly testing, a massive expansion of the mandate he previously imposed on health workers. President Biden applauded employers for requiring the shots and told other companies to follow suit. So, given what we've seen in the last year, your company will follow suit. Your company, the place that you currently work at, will follow suit. I just wanted to put that out there. I hope my recording app doesn't crash, but we're gonna go with it. So. He also pleaded with nearly 90 million eligible yet unmarked Americans to schedule their first shots, characterizing the FDA decision as a watershed moment in the situation fight Roughly 3 in 10 unvaccinated persons told the Kaiser Family Foundation they would be more likely to get the shots once full approval arrived. Quote, "The moment you've been waiting for is here. It's time for you to go get your mark. Get it today," Mr. Biden said from the White House. Quote, "Those who've been waiting for full approval should go get your shot now." What about those of us who just don't want it? Not waiting for any kind of approval, because we know how corrupt the FDA is. You know, the people that allow the spraying of glyphosate on your food and all these different investigations that they forgot to investigate, as in, various different birth controls, the effects of Depo-Provera, talcum powder, because talc is literally one of the worst things that you could ever, it's just not good, etc. So, yeah, FDA, not a very good organization. Regulators fully approved the Pfizer-BioNTech mark for those 16 and older. Children ages 12 and 15 can receive the shots under emergency use authorization. That has been in place since May. The FDA said its decision to license the Pfizer mark was based on the data drug maker provided from more than 40,000 trial participants in the U.S., Europe, Turkey, South Africa, and South America. Regulators said the mark was 91% effective against C19 in these participants, a slight drop from the 95% observed ahead of the emergency approval in late 2020. Yeah, so no. The review took a deep dive into follow-up data from clinical trials and manufacturing site inspections. The mark will be the same one given under emergency use authorization, with 2 doses given 21 days apart. Pfizer plans to market the mark under the brand name Comirnaty. And they just go on about there being surges, and we know all about that, and we know just about the agenda. Basically, they're saying, for anyone who has doubts, this approval should help overcome it, said former FDA Commissioner Mark McClellan, who directs Duke's Margolis Center for Health Policy. So, quote, "I do think we now have very clear evidence that some of the misinformation out there, like the mark can cause fertility issues or cause CVID or things like that, are just not there in the data. On the other hand, the effectiveness is," he said. Okay, well, where's the data? I would like to go through this data, Mr. Mark. Where's the data? Is there a link here that can refer me to the data? Let's go down a little bit. Isn't this hilarious? Right here, look at this one. This paragraph, let me see if I can do this. This paragraph right here. Take a read of this and just remember the paperwork that we have. Where did it go? Read that, because I won't. And just remember the paperwork that we have that I actually showed that's still up on Austin from Ohio 4. Well, if they're saying that, I got their paperwork to prove otherwise, so I don't want to hear any of it. We're going to go ahead and move on, because we basically just went through everything that needs to be known about this. Agenda moving forward, mandates will begin to flood. Don't send your kids to school, because it's coming there next. It already is. But we'll go on to this next one. Okay, here we are over at Christianity Daily. If you hear some talking or laughing or anything, there's kids over on my neighbor's porch, because they have their grandson over and he has his friends over. So, shouldn't interrupt what we're doing here, but just a forewarning on that. Anyway, U.S. congressional candidate says government should be allowed to shoot those who reject COVID narrative. Well, gee, isn't that lovely? Man, they're just coming right out with it, aren't they? They're not even trying to, say, oh, we don't want to do that. Oh, wait, yeah, we do. No, they're just coming right out. Wait till you hear what this guy has to say. A United States congressional candidate from California reportedly said the government should be allowed to shoot those who don't take C-19 seriously. WND said independent candidate Steve Cox remarked people who don't take the situation seriously enough should be shot in response to a post made Twitter by Matt Walsh on Monday. Walsh and Cox argued on social media regarding the C-19 lockdowns, which is still maintained strictly despite death rates plummeting. Walsh, who describes himself as a theocratic fascist, in his account bio raised in March, how the left has been pushing LGBT terminology on children, citing a book entitled ABC. Walsh, being active commentator on the side of conservatives, also spoke against wokeism being pushed on our kids through the book entitled ABCs of Morality, which Amazon cited as #1 release in early childhood education last April. In a Twitter post on Monday, Walsh said the V is here to stay and raised the need for people to stop cowering. And this is what he said, quote, C is here to stay. You're going to get it. Almost certainly won't kill you, but it could. You'll probably get cancer eventually, too, unless you die first. Lots of scary things out there. Death is certain. Suffering is unavoidable. Stop cowering. Live your life while you can. To which Cox replied, whenever anyone says we will die from something or variation thereof to justify not taking precautions to help protect others in this situation, we should be allowed to shoot them. Oh. Wait a minute, so this guy's saying when someone says, oh, we all die from something or a variation thereof to justify not taking precautions to help protect others in this situation, so this guy wants to protect others, but he thinks we should be allowed to shoot people who disagree with that or disagree with him. Why are you crying? We all die from something. For you, it's that blood in your gut, Cox added. This is somebody who is a congressional candidate. So, yeah. Walsh retorted by pointing out the psychotic response the congressional candidate made regarding what he posted. Walsh also sarcastically congratulated Cox on his basic observations on human morality. Yes, quote, yes, let's shoot people who make basic observations about human mortality. This is not a psychotic response at all, Steve. Well done, Walsh said. Okay. Cox, a photojournalist by profession, running for the 39th District of California in his crowdfunding site for his campaign, Cox said that he is running as one of the frustrated Americans who look forward to a sensible, fact-based solutions to the issues of our time. Sounds like this guy wants to go and grab firearms while he's at it. Probably wants to take your guns and then use your guns or their guns to shoot you for rejecting the narrative, which he called the narrative. Brave new world here we find ourselves in today at this point in time. When people that are running for state government can come out and just say government should be allowed to shoot American citizens, regardless of what that person believes or how they live their life, you don't get to do that. That is the very reason why, that's the very mindset and the very reason why the American people were given, well, initially by God, but given outline right to defend ourselves from people with mindsets like this guy that thinks that they should just start dropping people who reject their narrative. And he would probably hear me say that and say something about me, but, I'm only speaking from a defense perspective. I'm not talking about going out and taking people out for rejecting a narrative. There, Mr. Cox. What did it say your name was? What's your first name? let's see, what's his name? Steve Cox. Yeah, there he is, too. All right, Mr. Steve Cox. If you believe that and you want to go and shoot people for rejecting some narrative, you are the biggest piece of human trash I've ever had the privilege of listening to. I am now dumber for having listened to what you just said. And I'm sorry that you feel that way, but that's why the American people are armed. And then you go on about, sensible, fact-based solutions to the issues of our time. And you're one of the frustrated Americans. Well, I'm one of the frustrated Americans that's, speaking out against everything that you and your people have been doing for a long time. And then you come out and solidify my frustration by saying that you want to shoot people that disagree with you. So, Mr. Steve Cox, you can go and pound salt, for lack of a better term. And somebody can tell him that I said that. He highlighted his love for data, philosophy, and policy. Since it is of national importance, he stressed he is running independently because Republicans and Democrats really don't fix the system of governance as well as fix our democracy. They have no intention to, and neither do you, bud. You're just trying to get... I don't know what you're trying to get, but you probably just lost a whole lot of support. Not that it matters, but, And he goes on about, I present myself as an independent candidate for Congress in California's 39th Congressional District. Not as a partisan of the left or the right, but as one of you. The frustrated majority of Americans who simply want honest representation in government and sensible, fact-based solutions to the issues of our time. The growing number of regular people who feel trapped in a system that simply doesn't work for us. Cox introduced himself in the crowdfunding site. So, this dude can get on here and talk like this, but he still wants to shoot people like some kind of barbarian for rejecting something that he believes. So, I really just don't get it. I don't understand what this guy's even... Why? How can you get up there and speak like that and then claim that, I'm one of you guys? I'm one of you guys. I just want honest representation in government and sensible, fact-based solutions to the issues of our time. What are one of these sensible, fact-based solutions? To go out and kill people who reject a narrative, whether true or false. He didn't have to say. Just said, nope. Done. But the sad fact is that right now policy doesn't really matter because the representatives we send to Washington don't even work for us. They say otherwise, but they work for big business lobbyists, he added. And the Democratic and Republican parties themselves are beholden to the exact same industries and companies for funding, so even the rare representatives who refuse to take any of the lobbyists' blood money for their campaigns is completely hamstrung by their own party and can't get anything done for our benefit. Half true. So, yes, you now have people running for government that says that you should be allowed to shoot people who reject the COVID narrative. But he would turn around and say that you're not allowed to fight back or you're a terrorist. Who's the real terrorist here, buddy? Who's the real terrorist? Moving on. I wanted to bring this up. There's no article involved, but it's on Reddit and there's some discussions about it. But yesterday, gunfire erupts after Proud Boys and anti-fascists openly brawl in Portland without police intervention. In this first comment, asked if unchecked political violence is inevitable, Wheeler said, there are discussions online suggesting people plan to come to Portland on Sunday specifically to get into fights. We're telling them, hell no, Wheeler said. If they come here, if they engage in that type of activity, we're going to do the best we can with resources we have available to hold people accountable. And this guy said, might as well just send invites out and set up a PPV. Correct. They want this stuff to start going on. They need this stuff to start going on. Remember when the leader of I think it was the Proud Boys, Yeah, he turned out to be an FBI informant. So that there's one of your controlled groups right there, and so is the other side. This is just Hegelian dialectic, and what these groups do is they get regular people like you and I just all up in a frenzy, out there fighting, doing all this stuff while they're doing what they're doing. And it works every time throughout every society. But I just wanted to bring this up to show that this stuff is going on. And you're going to see more of this. They might pick it up again. They might pull a little thing like they did last year where we had the riots in the summer or whatever. They might pull any little thing. But while these people are out here doing this, exchanging gunfire, it helps them in their agenda, one, by claiming that we all need to turn in our weapons, even though the majority of us don't ever use our weapons and never would unless in some kind of, life or death situation. Also, they need this because, well, they're rolling out their mandates and stuff right now. And the whole this plus the Afghanistan thing, a lot of people aren't paying attention to the rollout of the mandates. They're not paying attention to the actual issues of our time. Not like that jackass said in the last one that I brought up. No. This is going to continue. And they're also most definitely planning some big false flag. We don't know what it is yet, but something is going to happen. I believe that. There's no way that just on a random plane over there, that's what they said, right? It was a random plane. And just this random acts are going on, and we didn't contrive any of this. We didn't do any of this. It just happened to have 9/11 on it. Come on. But I just wanted to bring that up to show that this is going on and the division is out there. And worse today because of the whole approval thing. So let's move on. Okay, here's one from American Military News. And this is Taliban announces red line against Biden's new U.S. troop extension idea. Tells Biden there will be consequences. This could also be conditioning for the false flag that is to come. Whatever that might be. Hopefully we could throw a wrench in the middle of their plans. Maybe rough them up a little bit, get them to back off. Any number of things we might need to watch at this point in time. The Taliban is setting August 31st as a red line date for U.S. and U.K. troops to leave Afghanistan and threatening consequences if the date is violated. Taliban's threat came a day after President Joe Biden said his administration would discuss extending the deadline beyond August 31st to complete evacuations. Go away. Taliban spokesman Dr. Suhail Shaheen set August 31st as a cutoff date for evacuations in an interview with Sky News that aired Monday. Quote, "It's a red line. President Biden announced that on 31 August. They would withdraw all military forces, so if they did extend it, that means they are extending occupation while there is no need for that," Shaheen said. If the U.S. or U.K. were to seek additional time to continue evacuations, the answer is no, or there will be consequences. It will create mistrust between us. If they are intent on continuing the occupation, it will provoke a reaction. On Sunday, Biden said, "Our hope is we will not have to extend, but there are going to be discussions, I suspect, on how far along we are in the process." Well, of course, because they always have to, go with the deliberations. We're going to have discussions, right? We're going to talk about this, and just so happens that we went past the deadline. Now there's going to be some kind of response. I hope it's not that bad. Thousands of Americans still remain in Afghanistan. As of Monday morning, the Pentagon said a few thousand had been evacuated. The exact number of Americans remaining in the country is unclear. Last week, U.S. officials estimated between 11,000 and 15,000 Americans were still in Afghanistan. In an interview with CNN's Brianna Keilar, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said, "We cannot give you a precise number of Americans in Afghanistan." Yes, they can. They just won't. Why can't they? They can zero in and pinpoint and listen to and even record every single conversation in the United States, whether somebody has a phone or not, in the world, actually, not just the United States. So why can't, and Afghanistan has cell phones, contrary to what people might believe, because people might believe that they're over there living in huts and stuff like that, and that's just not true. Some are, yes, but the majority aren't. They don't show you actual Afghanistan. They only show you like little parts, if any. Do yourself a favor. Go look up Afghanistan on anything. Even Google. Look up the images. We did a lot of damage over there, but yeah. Anyway, so why can't they tell you exactly how many people are there? Because we're on a need-to-know basis, or we just don't need to know it all. Regardless, it affects us, because as long as there are Americans over there, or said Americans over there, whether they are or not, if they say they are, for the purpose of what they're trying to do, which is obviously they're going to run past the deadline. They're going to say, oh, you can't cut us off because those are Americans by right and this and that, and they're going to act like they care about freedom and whatever, and people are going to fall for it. They're going to watch this crap. They're going to continue to roll out their mandates here, get that whole thing going, keep running you off the land, flooding. Like in Tennessee right now, they're literally having the worst flooding ever. And people are going to focus on this for a long time, and then whenever that false flag does decide to rear its ugly head, that'll do it. Everything will be just, boom, pushed into a new era. A new era of domination for them. The evacuation efforts have been complicated by Taliban checkpoints around Kabul city and large crowds of Afghan civilians around the Kabul airport. Make sure my recording's still working here. U.S. troops are maintaining their security perimeter at the Kabul airport and not going out to retrieve U.S. citizens. The evacuation operations have instead relied on assurances from the Taliban that Americans with passports will be let through the airport. Meanwhile, British troops have reportedly left the security perimeter at the Kabul airport to instead retrieve their citizens trapped outside the airport. Gee. In a Friday address, Biden said, "We have no indication that U.S. citizens haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport." Politico reported, based on the accounts of several people who participated in a briefing call with Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin on Friday, that Austin contradicted Biden and told lawmakers that Americans attempting to reach the Kabul airport have been beaten by Taliban fighters. And this always happens. They always contradict each other because it creates mass confusion. And just this little line right here will have somebody fighting somewhere, and that's the point of that. Oh yeah, well, this guy, this Lloyd Austin, he told him that they were getting beat by Taliban fighters, but Biden's saying that there's no indication. And people argue over that, because that's literally where we are. People argue over the stupidest things. If you have a piece of hair in your face during a video, literally, I've seen people go crazy on stupid videos because somebody's hair was in their face. And as we talked about the other day, the subconscious effect that this has on the number of normies or regular people running around, they might think that none of this affects them, and it's just a little give here, a little give there, whether they're aware or not. Subconsciously, it's affecting them, because they know, no matter what anybody says, they know that the world is being taken over. Everybody knows. It don't matter how deep you bury it down. It don't matter, because we do that, especially in America. We're taught to just bury all of our feelings and our problems, especially men. So anytime anything uncomfortable or chaotic happens, we're told to just don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I don't know. People in this country are just lost. That's the correct word for all of it. Lost. And it's just one of those things that we're going to have to individual by individual, we're going to have to talk to them and try not to fight with them. They will lash out. Most people do by just automatically now. Most people are on autopilot in their lives. So, the Associated Press reported the Taliban is blaming the U.S. military for the chaotic evacuation process in Afghanistan. The militant group said there's no need for any Afghans to flee the country. Taliban spokesman Zabihullah Mujahid said the U.S. was undermining Taliban rule by offering evacuations flights to Afghans. During his interview with Sky News, Shaheen dismissed concerns that Taliban are targeting Afghan citizens and that those Afghans are risking their lives to escape the country. Quote, I assure you it's not about being worried or scared, Shaheen said. They want to reside in Western countries, and that's kind of economic migration because Afghanistan is a poor country. 70% of the people of Afghanistan live under the line of poverty, so everyone wants to resettle in Western countries to have a prosperous life. It's not about being scared. And those 70% of people, they live in poverty because we did that to them. We went over there and destabilized their country. While you're on that search for Afghanistan, look up what it looked like before we invaded. And that was the point, destabilize. You can't have nations by themselves, sustaining themselves. No, not in the New World Order. No nation states allowed. Nation states are a thing of the past. When asked to address reports of Taliban fighters going door to door, find Afghans who've helped U.S. and NATO forces, Shaheen said, all fake news. I can assure you there are many reports by our opponents claiming what is not based on realities. So, again, mass confusion. Some people might take this guy at his word. Some people might not. Some people might go on about whatever else. It's just the way that it goes. We're just going to go to the next one, because these pop-ups are super annoying. Alright, here we are over at Stat News. Check this one out. I thought this was rather interesting for obvious reasons. A natural pandemic has been terrible. A synthetic one would be even worse. Okay. In 1988, as Russian scientist Nikolai Ustinov worked in the Vector Lab as part of a Russian program to develop viral weapons, he accidentally infected himself with the Marburg virus, a deadly pathogen related to Ebola. He died weeks later. During his autopsy, a pathologist accidentally stuck himself with a needle, died as well. At its peak, the Vector Lab was thought to be able to produce 2 tons of variola virus, a microbe that causes smallpox per year. The lab was eventually transitioned into a research institute after the Cold War, and recently helped develop the Russian C-19 mark, Sputnik V. It currently holds one of the world's 2 official repositories of smallpox. Already sounds kind of sketchy, wouldn't you say? While recent debates over the origins of SARS-CoV-2 have raised more questions than provided answers, an inescapable reality we need to be considering is that the United States is woefully unprepared for a synthetic pandemic, one purposefully created and deployed to cause mass human harm. That's true. And yet, another example of when talking about the disease, they say SARS-CoV-2. When talking about the event, they say C-19. because one does not mean the other. I don't know how many times we have to prove that. It's proven in their own words. So most people will just never get it. I need to learn to accept that. Most people just will never get it. They can't possibly put their pride enough, like, they can't put it on the side long enough to even question the fact that they might be wrong about something. We're all wrong about something. You know how many times I've been wrong? A lot. But you know what I do when I'm wrong? I've done it here a few times. I come back out the next day or in the next video and I say, hey, I told you this was this, but it turned out it was this. I think I've done that twice so far in 8 months that I've been making videos. And you know what that is? That's called accountability. That's called transparency. That's called admitting when you're wrong to correct something because you care more about the truth than anything. That's what that's called. Some people, they know they're wrong and they will argue. I know people like this. They will argue even if they know that you know that they're lying or wrong about something. They will argue anyway. Just to argue. Just for that pride and their ego to be stroked. They will never admit that they were wrong. From such people, turn away. Somebody told me something before about my long pauses. I forget who it was. They're like, oh, why do you pause for a long time on certain things? And I do that the same as, like when your teachers used to do it or when your parents used to do it. It's to get you to actually think about what I'm saying at that point in time. Most of you guys know this. I shouldn't even have had to say it, but yeah, that's why I do that. If I take too long, please tell me. The C-19 situation has revealed the fragility of the U.S. public health preparedness infrastructure when faced with a moderately deadly and moderately transmissible respiratory pathogen. Oh, wait. So now it's moderately deadly and moderately transmissible. But I thought it was the most deadliest thing in the world and we got to shut the world down, kill all the small businesses, make everybody wear a mask and force everybody to get a shot. Oh no, but it's moderately transmissible. Moderately deadly. We cannot begin to imagine the devastation, possibly even a threat to civilization if the country had to face a synthetic situation from a virus that had been intentionally engineered to spread as effectively as measles and had the virulence of filoviruses such as Ebola or Marburg. Sounds like they're having a good old plan. Go away, pop-up. The Biological Weapons Convention, signed in 1972 and effective since 1975, was the first multilateral disarmament treaty that prohibited developing, producing, and stockpiling weapons of mass destruction, and specifically biological weapons. To date, 182 countries have signed on and ratified this convention. Yet, the Biological Weapons Convention had been violated multiple times since its inception by the Soviet Union through its biopreparate laboratories. Forgive me for that. Which developed weaponized anthrax, Ebola, Marburg, plague, smallpox, and others. By Iraq, which produced anthrax, botulinum toxin, and aflatoxin during the Gulf War. And by rogue groups such as Japanese called Shinriko, which attempted to isolate Ebola, for terrorist activities during a 1992 outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They forgot to mention all the times that the United States violated this, but, that's for another time, I guess. In the U.S., situation preparedness efforts are currently housed across a number of institutions, including the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, Department of Defense, Department of Human Health and Services, specifically the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That's odd to deal with a pandemic, right? This fragmentation is problematic as identified in 2015 by the Blue Ribbon Study Panel on Biodefense. Now the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense, a group of former high-ranking government officials who analyzed U.S. biodefense capabilities. In its seminal report, A National Blueprint for Biodefense, the committee said that the root cause of this continuing vulnerability is the lack of strong, centralized leadership at the highest level of government. The group laid out 33, let me go back and read this again. The root cause of this continuing vulnerability is the lack of strong, centralized leadership at the highest level of government. The group laid out 33, as in degrees of Freemasonry, recommendations to address the large gaps in U.S. biodefense infrastructure. So what? You need a strong, centralized, totalitarian government, right? In order to combat this biodefense that we actually caused. We caused all this. And, we're going to need your reaction so we can present you with the solution sooner than we may expect. In a follow-up report in March 2021, Biodefense in Crisis, the group rightfully criticized the federal government for failing to follow through on the majority of recommendations aside from the creation of a national biodefense strategy in 2018, which was never actually implemented. The group concluded that the U.S. remains at a catastrophic biological risk from a synthetic pandemic. They're never going to stop. They're never going to stop with this pandemic stuff. Now that they know that they can scare the entire world with a tiny little, a respiratory thing or whatever they're saying, 99% survival rate, nobody's died that you can see with your own eyes, except for people who had, underlying conditions that were bad in the first place. When this all first went on, there was a guy, he does not work with us anymore. He was fired, I believe, last year for something unrelated, but when this all first started, he told me that his, it's super real, man. My 98-year-old grandmother died of it. Oh, sorry to hear that, man. This is before we all knew what this actually was, for real. No, I was like, that's terrible. Whatever. And he said, yeah, well, she had leukemia for 12 years and this and that and a bad hip and a bad immune system. And I'm like, wait. So your 98-year-old grandmother who had leukemia for 12 years, among other problems, died of COVID. Yeah, dude, yeah. No, she didn't. I mean, come on. It's not that hard. Okay, let's see. Even in the midst of a natural pandemic, the threat of a synthetic pandemic should be at the forefront of the U.S. national security agenda. Here are 4 steps we believe the country's leaders need to take. Got to pay attention here. First, leaders need to recognize that a pandemic driven by a highly virulent synthetic pathogen will be a global threat. The global community must recognize and address this. The single most important step the U.S. government could take to reduce the magnitude of the next pandemic is to provide the essential support and material resources to countries with ongoing C-19 epidemic surges, especially with regard to accessing marks including raw materials and technology transfers. And also toward building and strengthening primary healthcare systems. By creating health infrastructure and new pipelines for access to essential biological materials, the U.S. can help other countries stay prepared if and when they are dealing with a novel disease outbreak. So, they're literally just admitting that they're going to keep pulling this. That's what articles like this tell me. Only by showing leadership in protecting communities globally can the U.S. engender sufficient trust to secure global support for improving surveillance in response to future threats. Of course, you always got to increase surveillance, right? U.S. public health leaders must ensure that whenever the next pandemic-prone disease originates, all countries are ready to stop it quickly. Yeah, we need a world government. How about that? A world government. So then, everything will be under one umbrella. So then, when a disease shows up, they can squash it anywhere in the world because they have jurisdiction. Good idea. And they just, get to run away with all the riches and resources, and we will all be enslaved. So, for those of you still wearing their mask in their car, you are helping to perpetuate this. That's the real reality. I don't care if you try to turn it around and say that I'm making people sick. I haven't been sick in 15 years. So, I don't want to hear about the asymptomatic and I better just be quiet, guys, or else I'm going to get this video taken down. Probably already walking on that tightrope. Second, federal leaders must act upon the recommendations laid out in the 2021 Biodefensive Crisis Report. These include developing a more organized leadership structure within the federal government to coordinate biodefense activities across various sectors and creating a national biodefense hospital system that can be ready for activation in the case of a serious biological attack. I am going to get my hands on that report. Funding must also be increased for the development of biodetection technologies and medical countermeasures, such as larger respiratory repository of antiviral and antibacterial compounds that can be quickly distributed within cities and hospitals if needed. And the U.S. government must support the global health security agenda in efforts to strengthen the international biosurveillance. Is this ringing any bells? Any alarm bells going off in your head? Because they are in mine. Key ways to improve our biosecurity apparatus were laid out 6 years ago in a national blueprint for biodefense. Oh, I'm sure it was. The country failed to act on them before C-19, can't risk doing so again. Third, the federal government must ensure that states, hospitals, and clinics are adequately equipped to avoid becoming amplifiers of emerging outbreaks. In 2005, Marburg virus outbreak in Angola was spread primarily through a hospital where patients were being treated. Sick people tend to show up to hospitals, and if unclear what's being treated, inadequate infection control measures may be used. Well, think about that for a minute. Sick people tend to show up to hospitals, and if it's unclear what's being treated, inadequate infection control measures may be used. As in, they're going to do all kind of things to you in order to maintain these control measures. This was true in 2014 for the first Ebola patient in the U.S., Thomas Eric Duncan, who was initially not asked about his travel history when he arrived at Dallas Hospital and infected 2 nurses, one of whom ended up traveling on a domestic flight to and from Ohio. Part of this effort must include wide availability of rapid diagnostic platforms, such as high-throughput genomic sequencing. Going into the genomes now, which can quickly identify organisms of concern. Additionally, we must ensure that ventilation and decontamination practices are functioning effectively. Now we're starting to get into where they can form the narrative for the technologies that they now have that people are willingly going out and getting for lack of a better term. Oh, in order to make sure that we can identify these deadly organisms and these deadly pathogens before you even know. And people will line up, as we've already seen. Fourth, federal and state governments must guarantee that the general public has immediate access to basic safety prevention measures, such as high-grade masks, that can filter out aerosols in the case of an airborne pathogen. Transmission route, that would be of highest concern. C-19 situation made clear that any situation response efforts must start with protecting individuals as quickly as possible. Just as many people have fire extinguishers and smoke detectors in their homes, so too should they have adequate personal protection against infectious disease threats. Okay, here's something. They pulled out the old fire extinguisher and smoke detector as a preventative measure. Those are some of the same arguments I use for carrying a gun. You got a fire extinguisher, right? Yeah. But your house isn't on fire. No. Why do you have it? Just in case. Right. Just like I have a gun, just in case someone tries to kill me or my wife. Or burn my house down. I don't know. Or try to shoot me for rejecting a narrative. I wonder who said that. Steve Cox, congressional candidate, California. That guy makes me really mad. I'm just going to keep talking about him if I don't move on. The emergence of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes C-19. Oh, yeah, okay. There's the first time I've ever heard that, actually. As a human pathogen may very well have been a natural spillover event, but this situation should be a stark reminder that the risk of biological warfare must be taken seriously, and preparations be made for an even worse case scenario, and the time to do that is now. Didn't Bill Gates just recently say something about that? About, if a terrorist gets a hold of one of these. Yeah, he did. This is what they're doing. They're literally planning out a synthetic. That's all they have to do. Think of the SPARs. They're never going to let go of this. And anybody that thinks, if you're on this channel and you think that we're going back to normal, please refer to every single one of my previous videos before this one. Because we, in this community, have proven time and time again that your life is never going back to normal. Klaus Schwab even said it. So, moving on. I wanted to read just a little bit more of this. And if you don't recognize this, I did this if you take the live streams out, I did this 2 videos ago. Like actual videos like I'm doing now with information. And it's on the video, well, if you all know from the title of this one, how it all ties in. And if you want to go back to the end of that one where I was reading this, all the way up until where we're going to read here, just to continue this on, because I've really been wanting to bring this back on and read this all out because it's very important. It's how it all ties in, and it's very lengthy. But I just wanted to go through, we were somewhere down here. We were kind of down here. Okay, actually, we read this. And, okay, so we'll go ahead and just start right here. So, what I was saying before I go on, if you go back to the previous video, it's at the end of the title, how it all ties in, part 1. This is how it all ties in, part 2. And it's pretty lengthy, so there might be a part 3 and a part 4. I will work on it. But I only have a minute or an hour and 10 minutes, so I can do a little bit of reading here before we have to go. More recently, now as the UN Special Envoy for Climate Action and Finance, the UK government special advisor to the COP26 conference, and a board trustee of the WEF, Carney reinforced his message and signaled his stakeholder partners and how the new IMFS would select the corporate winners and losers. This is all stuff that took place prior to C19, by the way. There will be industry sectors and firms that do very well during this process because they will be part of the solution. But there will also be ones that lag behind and they will be punished. So, right there, these are the people in the NGOs and all of that. They're telling you that if you lag behind or don't get along in the new world order, you will be punished. We've already seen it. The winners and losers won't just apply to corporations. The new stakeholder, IMFS, does not appear to be based on mass employment either. Recently, the UK government released their Green Jobs Task Force report, promising a glittering future of employment opportunities. They cite the International Energy Agency. Net zero by 2050, a roadmap for the global energy sector, the IEA state. And we've been over this before. It's impossible to have net zero carbon. You know what they would have to do to get to net zero carbon? Think about it. What do you breathe? The transition to net zero brings substantial new opportunities for employment. 14 million jobs created by 2030. In our pathway, around 5 million jobs are lost, meaning structural changes can cause shocks for communities with impacts that persist over time. This requires careful policy attention to address the employment losses. It will be vital to minimize hardships associated with these disruptions, locating new clean energy facilities in heavily affected areas wherever possible, and providing regional aid. Now, people look at this and they're like, 14 million jobs created, okay. 5 million jobs lost, so they would say, well, most people would ignore the 5 million. They would just say 14 million jobs created. So, let's do 14 million jobs, 5 million lost, that's 9 million, right? Jobs they created. Well, here's the thing. It doesn't sound that bad because 9 million jobs got created. What if all those 5 million were the rest of the small businesses in the United States? And the 9 million that were, or the 14 million that were created, were all for these big intergovernmental NGO corporations. What if they were all those big, huge jobs? Total control taken from you and your family to provide for yourself or in your community, given all to these people who have always taken all the money out of your community to their headquarters. So, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. Pivotal jobs. To be clear, green revolutionaries like Mark Carney and the IEA are suggesting that we can practically eliminate heavy industry, reduce manufacturing capacity virtually to now, remove fossil fuels from domestic and commercial energy market, and at the same time increase employment. This will certainly come as a surprise to PricewaterhouseCoopers, who are partners with both the Chatham House and the World Economic Forum. In 2018, PwC modeled the workforce of the future. They presented a number of scenarios based on mega trends and their assessments of how we might adapt to these apparently unavoidable impositions. Whichever model they outlined, the common theme was increasing automation and AI domination of the workplace. Job losses are unavoidable, and they said although new jobs will be created. Yeah, for the artificial intelligence. Not for you or I. If they haven't made it abundantly clear yet, we are no longer needed. However, the scope and range of these new jobs appear to be extremely limited. These created jobs will be done by what PwC describes as the pivotal people. They have a very particular skill set, making them valuable to their corporate stakeholder employers. And they predicted those workers performing tasks which automation can't yet crack become more pivotal. And this means creativity, innovation, imagination, and design skills will be prioritized by employers. This view is supported by business leaders worldwide who responded to our most recent CEO survey. These are the pivotal people. And they will also be cast aside, so don't feel special. They already said your jobs can't be yet cracked by technology, but they will. We'll come back up to this employment stuff. We'll go through these. Let me go down just a little bit. Okay. Carney's successor as governor of Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, has already stated that it would be important to get rid of unproductive jobs. Said that job losses as a result of the C-19 crisis were inevitable. Yet again, the situation has seemingly acclimatized us to a new carbon-neutral economy. One world. Unprecedented economic response. Mark Carney, then BOE governor, participated in the G7 Central Banker Symposium in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, 4 months before the first cases of C-19 were reported. At that meeting, the largest investment management firm in the world, BlackRock, presented their report titled Dealing with the Next Downturn. To the gathered central bankers, BlackRock stated, unprecedented policies will be needed to respond to the next economic downturn. Monetary policy is almost exhausted as global interest rates plunge towards zero or below. Fiscal policy on its own will struggle to provide major stimulus in a timely fashion, given high debt levels and the typical lags with implementation. A lot of high-level meetings before this whole thing. They stated the current IMFS would not be able to respond effectively to a major financial crisis. Conventional and unconventional monetary policy works primarily through the stimulative impact of lower short-term and long-term interest rates. This channel is almost tapped out. Fiscal policy. Government spending and taxation wouldn't be able to respond to a significant downturn because government debt was off the charts. Lack of activity in productive economy meant tax increases would be insufficient to respond to a major financial crash. Similarly, monetary policy creating money was tapped out because interbank lending and associated bond markets were close to implosion. By design, sense of urgency among the G7 bankers, as revealed by Mark Carney in August 2019 speaking at Jackson Hole Symposium, he said, quote, most fundamentally, a destabilizing asymmetry at the heart of the IMFS is growing. A multipolar global economy requires new IMFS to realize its full potential. That won't be easy. History teaches that transition to a new global reserve currency may not proceed smoothly. Technological developments provide the potential for such a world to emerge. The Bank of England have been clear. Terms of engagement for any new systemic private payment system must be enforced well in advance of any launch, perhaps through a network of central bank digital currencies. You starting to get the picture yet? The deficiencies of the IMFS have become increasingly potent. Even a passing acquaintance with monetary history suggests that the center won't hold. I will close by adding urgency to Ben Bernanke's challenge. Let's end the malign neglect of the IMFS and build a system worthy of our diverse, multipolar, global economy that is emerging. So, I'm actually going to leave you with that one. And I might have read a little bit, the one I read last time, but that's okay. And I accidentally closed the page out last time, so we'll leave this one up this time, and we'll continue this first and foremost, because I want to read the rest of this. And I will read it with you guys. So, what they're saying here is that they're creating a new world economic order. They're creating a worldwide, new, based on central bank digital currencies, a new international monetary fund, per se. They're creating a new economic system that's going to be based on this fourth industrial revolution, this transhumanist Internet of Bodies type thing. This will be one of the greatest communist, totalitarian governments to ever have been formed. And it will encompass the entire world. So, I will leave you with that, and we will pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and glory forever and ever. Amen.